Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hopkins, CMO at Rev.io, and I am joined by Rob Rae, current Corporate VP of Community and Ecosystems at Pax8, but most recently announced a new board member here at Rev.io. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Jennifer. Super happy to be here.
Yeah, I think I speak for the entire team here at Rev.io, but we're all really excited to have you join the team. And more importantly, we're really excited to have you on board for the exciting journey that we have ahead for Rev.io in 2025. I think a lot of people know Rev.io as a leader over the past 20 years in the communications billing space. We are going to be introducing an entirely new platform in September of this year, which is going to be introducing our new PSA software. The cool thing for us on this one, Rob, is that we're going to be bringing together things that we've done really well over the past 20 years. So the communications billings piece, the new piece of PSA and payment processing, but we're going to be bringing it together all within one roof, within one platform, one login for our customers. You're obviously familiar with Rev.io. We've played in the same space for a while now, but for those who are listening in, tell us a little bit about your relationship with Rev.io, and more importantly, what compelled you to join our board of directors.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, the ecosystem of everything that we've been doing for the last number of decades, it kind of like intertwines. And I know like Rev.io has done a little bit on the MSP space, a lot on the telco space. So our worlds have been, whereas I'm kind of the opposite. Our worlds have kind of been colliding a couple of times. I've run into Brent and team at a number of events, and Evan and some of the other folks at Rev.io. So, it's always been interesting. We've always been trying to find a way to work together. But what really caught my eye was when, the acquisition of Tiger Paw was done, because that is a PSA is one of the core things in the managed services space. We like to talk about PSA being a cornerstone of building a managed services practice. So, super interesting. Obviously, knowing the team for as long as I have, and just engaging with them, they're excited. They want to innovate. They want to do all the things that kind of like really get me excited when I talk about technology or talk about the managed services space. So, when we finally had a chance to connect, and they shared with me what the plan was, no brainer. It was something that I wanted to be involved in.
That's great. Yeah, the Tiger Paw acquisition was a big move for us. And, we've been working really closely with the Tiger Paw customers and
Mhm.
community over the past year and a half to understand, what pieces of that technology were, can't live without, right? And then what were some things that maybe that they were missing. And so our team's been really hard at work, our development team, over the past year and a half to just kind of re-envision what that PSA offering can look like. And so I think a lot of people in that community are going to be really excited about what we're coming to market with here in a couple months.
Yep.
You mentioned this, this you're on one space and we're kind of on the other, but these two worlds are colliding, right? When you're looking at telecommunications and IT and MSPs, what are some of the trends? I know you get asked this question a lot, but like, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in this convergence of these two groups coming together specifically for service providers this year?
Yeah, it's definitely so I've always, or not always, but for a long time was kind of a naysayer of a lot of the convergence part of this, because we each kind of like, if you think about even add print into there as kind of like a third vertical that kind of serves the SMB market. There really hasn't been a ton of convergence outside of M&A.
Mhm.
It makes a lot of sense, but that it's just kind of been really, really slow. But I think when you talk about things like cybersecurity, which obviously has been a massive trend in everybody's industry, and just the needs of that SMB market, I think when you look at SMB as a whole, like just the small medium businesses that are out there, how probably up until the pandemic, were relatively underserved outside of the SIs, the MSPs, like the people that were actually providing the services. A
Yeah.
lot of a lot of the technology wasn't really designed for the SMBs. So, when you think about now, post-pandemic, and how people are now all of a sudden recognizing that the SMB market is one that fuels pretty much every economy around the world,
Mhm.
and how critical and important it is. And then all those, investment dollars that are coming in. And now all of a sudden we're seeing technology being innovated for the SMB market, for MSPs in particular.
Mhm.
That's a really, really exciting time. And that's, I think, where you're seeing the convergence, is the fact that the needs of the actual end user client are no different between the managed services space, the telco space, even the print space, to the point where, convergence and leveraging newer technologies for that convergence actually kind of makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You talk a lot about PSAs being the cornerstone, right,
Mhm.
for MSPs, and there's tremendous growth happening within that MSP space right now. The demand is there, right? Like the growth within just the MSPs coming to market are there. How well do you think that PSA platforms are servicing that audience right now? There's people been in the space for a while.
Yeah.
AI is coming in. You're a big fan of innovation. Like, how well do you think PSAs are servicing them? And, do you see an opportunity, for more work to be done in that space?
Yeah. When I think back to the early days of managed services, myself personally, I was in the RMM side of the
Hmm.
business, which, in the RMM space, we like to think that that's the cornerstone of it. And yet the
Hmm.
PSAs that talked about that was the cornerstone of it. In essence, you needed both in order to set up and actually operate a managed service provider. So there were massive opportunities. What are we looking at? 20, 25 years ago for these technologies, because it was something that was new. It was a transformational business model for, traditional resellers to become managed service providers.
Hmm.
So a lot of organizations that figured it out from the beginning and did a lot of that innovation, focused on their communities, invested into the actual MSPs and the MSP education, they won. And they still exist today. So that piece again, like, has really kind of flushed through as true. However, the market, and I think we've seen it over the last couple of years. The MSPs need more, they need better, they need faster. And, from an innovation standpoint, there just hasn't been a ton of innovation on that side. And, the analogy I like to use is if you think about building a house, right? The foundation was built 25 years ago using older materials and old techniques. Whereas today, you think about technology innovation, just even leveraging AI, the things that you can do in order if you're coming at it from scratch, or, coming at it with a little more of an open window to create innovative technology, that's where we're going to see a lot of winners. And it's not just in the PSA space, because we've seen disruption in the PSA space for the last couple of years. We've seen, people like, one of the conversations that we've always had in managed services is how incredibly difficult it is to change PSAs, right? That is, so you have to be really uber motivated. And we've actually seen in the managed services space that people have been motivated. The one that they've been using for 15 years is just not cutting it anymore. It's not moving fast enough. It's become over bloated in certain areas. So,
Yeah.
you look at a lot of the newer technologies, and Rev.io included, coming to market with, newer innovations, newer ways of doing it, faster, better, even easier ways to transition to that new model. It's ripe for disruption, yet it's still a traditional business model that we're going to probably continue to see for as long as managed services exists.
Yeah. I mean, that drive of doing more, sometimes with less and even
Yep.
faster. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of what MSPs are up against every single day. And I
Hmm.
did like your analogy of the house, right? Of, some of these newer technologies coming to market where they've got that foundation of AI kind of built in, and AI
Yeah.
servicing these MSPs in their day to day. It's only going to help them move faster, work more efficient, right? And be able to
Yep.
generate more revenue for their business.
Yep.
Um, and it coming in like on the Rev.io side, I mean, where do you see our biggest opportunity to service this audience, right? From a platform and innovation standpoint.
I think coming in from the the billing side, the payment side, like, and the expertise there, coming into the PSA market is kind of like a reverse of what we've seen, where it's typically you got the PSA and then you kind of build those on, or you do integrations with third parties. And that's something that's kind of been around, and it's a legacy way of doing it. So I think the kind of reverse effect, which is, you become the experts on that communication, billing, and that payment side of it, bringing in the PSA technology. It's going to be an interesting take to see how that develops and how quickly that develops, because the billings and invoicing, the payments part of all of this is kind of the critical part of it. And it's the part that I think a lot of us take for granted, because we just expect it to work. And unfortunately, when it doesn't work, or there are problems, or there is pushback, or something along those lines, that's when it tends to really impact the MSP's bottom line. We're all focused on technology, technology innovation, delivering technology, making sure everybody's secure, cyber, all those types of things. The last thing you want to worry about is whether your invoicing and your payments are correct. So, that's, coming at it from that angle, I think is again, where there's another exciting opportunity. But I also think that that's a market that, on the PSA side, that's been kind of heavily underdeveloped. As we talked about before, is kind of really ripe for disruption as a result.
Yeah, and our hope this year, Rob, is to really provide an end-to-end solution for MSPs. So to your point, I mean, nobody really wants to have a Frankenstein tech stack, right? Where you're working out of this platform and this platform and, worrying about billing and quotes and cash and invoicing and payments over here, and then worrying about customer management and ticketing and technician servicing over here. So being able to offer that all within one platform is really where we're hoping to
Yeah.
provide value for the market.
Yeah.
One thing that I had mentioned at the beginning of the call and kind of coming back to this idea of offering an end-to-end platform, I'm curious to get your thoughts on, where you see value in a PSA platform being able to have everything natively within
Mhm.
one roof rather than relying on integrations or APIs, different connection points in order to service that. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, integrations are important, and any MSP that is looking at, any of the tools that they're actually using in their stack, they got to make sure that it all integrates with each other. So it's something that's kind of been core to the beginning of time, which was, does it all work together? Is it easily going to seamlessly kind of report all these things? And again, the problem is that sometimes that's a barrier to you finding even a newer technology or even a cheaper technology, because you got to make sure that it works with what you've got.
Mhm.
And that means that a lot of the more newer innovator ones that are kind of coming out, they may not work right out of the gate with your kind of legacy systems. So again, and I think you kind of hinted on it, is that if you're coming in with kind of an all-in-one solution for things that make sense, not just piecing together pieces from all over the place
Yeah.
and many, many different kind of competencies and whatnot, but as opposed to like, here should be the all-in-one. Like, it only makes sense that all of this stuff should have been together on day one. And I'm not talking about the full MSP stack. I'm talking about the business management part of the actual MSP, the CRM, the payments, like that kind of stuff should have been together from day one. It just hadn't been, kind of figured out. And I think, when you look at a lot of the newer technologies, that's where it is. And when you own, as a vendor, when you own those pieces, you're obviously going to make sure that your stuff works together. I mean, it should work together, but you have the ability, as opposed to reaching out to another person to say, hey, I need you to fix this, or we need to work together to fix this, and try to fit that into the timeline. It's literally the same engineers in the same office. It just
Yeah.
creates a really competitive advantage, and definitely, an advantage for the actual managed service providers that use it.
Yeah, and simplicity too,
Yeah.
to your point of having that one vendor who can do that for you rather than having to connect with multiple. But I'm actually tying this back into, I'm going to steal your analogy of this whole building the foundation, because I think to your point, like being able to partner with a vendor who's got a solid foundation, right? That's AI driven and informed and influenced and built, but then also a foundation where you've got all of these pieces that were fundamentally built together. I think it just offers, a really good value, I think, to MSPs who already have to
Absolutely.
do so much.
Yeah.
If we can take one headache off of them and their day-to-day operations, I call that a win on my side.
Yeah, I no, completely agree. And I think, ideally, again, like, if let's keep the MSPs out there working with their clients, selling their technology, selling their stacks, selling their
Yeah.
services, and just make sure everything in the background just works. That's the
Yeah.
important part.
Yep, I agree. All right, Rob, that's all that I had for today. Again, just wanted to say very excited to have you on our board of directors. And for me personally, I look forward to working with you throughout the year and excited to introduce this new PSA offering to the market.
I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited for MSPs to start, really, really leaning into it. And anytime anything like, I've loved the MSP space since I discovered it 25 years ago. I like to think I've been a big advocate for MSPs and the MSP space amongst the investor community, the vendor community, even other parts of the world and either verticals. So, when I see newer technologies that are coming in that can really, make a difference, I get excited. I get behind it. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, and probably one good thing I should add before we drop too is ahead of the full launch that we've got slated for September, we're
Mhm.
actually opening up early access to
Nice.
select MSPs starting April 1st. So for anyone listening to this, feel free to reach out to Rob or myself. Would happy to kind of open up access for you to let you
Mhm.
get your hands on the product and provide feedback and make sure that we're going in the right direction of tailoring this product to what your unique business needs are. So happy to open that up to anyone who's interested. But
Awesome.
anyways, Rob, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Jennifer. You too.